Hey y'all, in this video, I'm gonna share one thing that will boost your giving when it comes to your nonprofit. Let's get into it. Hey there, this is Tiffany with Boss on a Budget. I help new and small nonprofits get up and running. So if you need help with your nonprofit, make sure you're subscribed. I talk about how to launch your nonprofit and how to raise startup money for your nonprofit. And I specifically speak to startups. Just want to be clear when I talk about these tips and things like that I'm speaking to people who are like working from the ground up, because I really do believe there's not a lot of information out there for people who are starting from ground zero. And so I want to provide resources for those folks because I know how it feels. I know how it feels when you're trying to raise money and you don't know what to do or where to start, but you just know you need the money to do the good work you're trying to do. So in this video, I'm going to share the one thing that can boost your giving, but also I'm going to share 3 things to remember when it comes to raising money that I don't want you to ever forget. These are 3 tips that you can take along with you on your journey that will always remain true when you're raising money for your nonprofit. So what's the one thing that can boost your giving? It's thanking people. It's acknowledging people. When people feel like they've been seen for their gift, then they're way more likely to give to you again, and they're way more likely to feel connected to your cause and want to support your cause and want to be an ambassador for your cause. So you being able to thank people and to thank them quickly makes them feel like, oh, I made a good decision. I wouldn't mind supporting that nonprofit again if they were to ask me to do something more, to be involved more deeply or anything like that. And there are many different ways that you can thank folks, right? You can be creative around this, and you can look to other nonprofits to see how they thank people. But people give shout outs on social media. People absolutely give personal thank you messages. You should be doing that through your email marketing system. You can do handwritten thank you notes. You can do thank you calls. There are some nonprofits who have like physical spaces. So sometimes they'll have like a thank you wall where they'll put people's names on the wall. So people, when they come in, they can see their names. People have annual reports where at the beginning or like kind of in the spring of the year, they'll send out their financial data from the year before and they'll list their donors in these annual reports. There are a bunch of different ways you can acknowledge people, and I just recommend you be creative. And since you're small and you're new, you can use that to your advantage because your donor base may be a little bit smaller, so you can be a little bit more personal when it comes to thanking. I always recommend that you call people. Even if you are nervous about doing that, most of the time people don't pick up the phone anyway, so it's just leaving a voicemail. But it's always good to try to have that personal connection because that's what people remember. It's good to have, emails, absolutely. It's good to send letters in the mail, absolutely. But people do remember that personal touch when it comes to your nonprofit. So here are 3 things I want you to always remember when it comes to raising money for your nonprofit. And before I go into those 3 things, if you need help learning how to raise money or trying to figure out all the different ways to raise money, make sure you check out my fundraising masterclass. I'm linking it below. It's a replay of a class that I did with over 2 hours of really good information about how to raise money, how to think about raising money, all the systems and technology you need to have in place to raise money. And I'm also linking a video above that talks a little bit about different ways you can raise money. Okay, so I'm going to get into it. These are the 3 things you should never forget about asking for money. So the first thing is that people give based on their needs, not yours. So I'm going to say that one more time. People give based on their needs, not yours. So sometimes we make the mistake thinking that people are going to care so much about the work that we're doing. They're going to care so much about our organization, and they're going to care so much about me as the founder that that's why they're giving. And in most circumstances, the priority for people when they're giving is themselves, how it makes them feel. Now, they may care. I'm not saying that they don't care that they helped you or they helped someone else, but the motivation behind that often is because they want to feel good about themselves. They want to be able to live out their beliefs and their values. I got that from my friend Elizabeth. She had a great way of describing it, but they want to live out their values through you. So a lot of times it has everything to do about them and how they feel, and not much about how it makes you feel. So I want you to think about that when it comes to asking people for money, because you may be thinking to yourself, well, they care about this, so I'm going to ask about this and ask in this way because they'll care about what I'm saying. But what matters is how they feel about it. So that what you should do in response to that is ask your donors, why they give. Ask your donors, what is that inside of them that clicked, that made them finally say yes? And once you ask enough people, you'll get really good at speaking their language to be able to connect to them, to be able to tap into the language and the word and the phrases that activate them, right? So if you want people to respond to your request, you want people to respond to what you're asking for, you need to ask them point blank. Like, you need to ask them what motivates you to give. I always recommend that you interview your donors or interview people who have the potential to give, to hear from them directly, to hear the words that activate them and make them move. The second thing I want you to remember is that your goal is to build long-standing relationships with the people you're asking for money. So your goal is not the donation. And I know this sounds so weird because you're like, Tiffany, that is the goal. I'm trying to get money. But the ultimate goal is for you to build a relationship where whatever you ask of that donor, they're so connected to your cause that they're willing to step up for you. And even in some moments where they can't give, they can at least share some information or introduce you to someone who may be able to give or may be able to get you what you need. In any kind of fundraising that you're doing, you want to think about the impact of the relationship and what that relationship could bring you. When you're short-sighted and all you're thinking about is the money, and you get so disappointed when people can't give you the money, you begin to lose out on the opportunities that may be coming from that no or from that not right now. So this happens a lot to people when they're writing grants, because you can get really discouraged when you're writing grant after grant and you're getting rejected. You can use that as an opportunity to ask the funder, how could you improve on your application? Or are there other people that they may know of that may be interested in the work that you're doing, even though they're not interested at this point in time? And when you begin to build relationships with the people at the funders or the people who are your donors, then that person-to-person connection will get you in rooms and get your name mentioned in places that may not have been mentioned if you hadn't pursued those relationships. So I want you to think about, how can you build long-standing relationships with people even after they give or if they don't give? I want you to think about, like, what would motivate people to want to stay in relationship with your organization. First things first, they need to hear from you. If the only time they're hearing from you is when you're asking for money, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good for anybody. So that's one of the first things you need to think about. How are you going to keep in contact with them? How are you going to stay relevant to them, stay in front of their minds? And it doesn't have to be much. You can share updates about the work you're doing. You can share powerful stories about people who are impacted by your work. You can share stories of people who are doing the work alongside you, maybe staff people or volunteers. You can ask them questions, right? You can build relationships with them to ask them what motivated them to give, like I said before, or to just call them on the phone and say hello. This is when your board members can really step in and support that process, because it shouldn't be all on you as a founder to build those relationships, especially those personal ones. You're not going to have a personal relationship with every single donor, but some people you're going to build those relationships with, and your board members can help do that. So the second point is, I just want you to think about this in terms of building relationships. The end goal is not the money. The end goal is a relationship, because when you focus on that, there's endless, limitless possibilities when you do that. And the third piece of advice I want to give you when it comes to raising money is that a gift is an opportunity. So I'm going to say that again. A gift is an opportunity. When someone gives to your organization, it's a major thing, whether it's $5, whether it's $200 or $2 million. That person decided that with the money they earned, they decided to give it to you. Now, there are many reasons and motivations for people to do it. And sometimes it's not benevolent. Sometimes it's not a good reason. Sometimes people are just trying to get tax breaks. I'm not talking about that, right? But even then, that may be an opportunity to engage people more and get them really invested in your mission. It's an opportunity to build and strengthen your community. Every single person who decides to give money to your organization is your opportunity to get to know them more. So what I want you to think about is, every time someone gives for the first time, or even if they haven't given in a long time and they're giving again, how are you going to say thank you? How are you going to welcome them? How are you going to make them feel like now you're part of our community? Now we're doing this work together because you provided your resources, we're providing our resources and our work, and we're together making this happen. I want you to think about how you can make people feel welcome, how you can make people feel connected. So think about having a welcome series. A welcome series is a series of correspondence that you give to somebody once they give. It can happen through the mail, it can happen over email, or even maybe through phone. But someone gives, what's the next message they're going to hear from you? What's the message after that? So the first message absolutely should be a thank you. But then after that, what are you following it up with? It's your opportunity to share more about your organization. It's your opportunity to share the impact that you're making, because they may not realize all the good work that you're doing, or they may not realize why you got started and why it's so important. They may not know your founder's story, or if you're the founder, they may not know your story and why it's so important to you to do this work. And when you invest in building them and bringing them into your community, it's an opportunity for them to become a part of the work that you're doing. And for them to be more invested, for them to add other people from their network and to support you. I've been a part of nonprofit startup journeys where by investing in a sense of community, they built their board members off of that, right? They built huge groups of volunteers, huge groups of people who are like, I just care so much about this now that I know more about what you're doing, that I just want to help. I don't even want to get paid. How can I help? So I want you to think about that when you talk about the work that you're doing. I don't want you to be generic and say, oh, thank you for your donation. You made this possible. That's good. But then how can you up the ante and say, look at what we're doing together, right? Look at the change that we can make together because you decided to give. Build that hope, build that vision, and make them feel like you can't do it without them, so that people feel compelled to want to help. People feel like, oh, if I don't help, it makes them feel bad, right? If I don't help, I'll feel bad about that. I want you to think about building a sense of community. And this very much connects to what I was talking about with point number 2, like focusing on a relationship, because it's all connected. How can you make that person feel like they're part of a community? And how can you be intentional right after that first gift so people are captured from the very beginning and are willing to go to bat for your organization? Can you tell that I care a lot about this? I hope you're getting this because it really matters, especially when you're new and you're small and you don't have a lot of resources, and every interaction that you have with people matters, because that could be your break, or that could be that one interaction that catapults you into a place where you can be financially secure. So I want you to be intentional about your fundraising and not just focus on the money, but focus on the possibilities that come from raising money. If you need help with your nonprofit, don't forget to visit me at www.bossonabudget.com. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.